it's exciting, and it's my pleasure to be able to bring you filmmakers who are very passionate about their projects. And this movie, The Invitation, is not what you think it is. I highly encourage you to check out the trailer, to go see. The film opens today in theaters, and it is not the vampire movie that you expect, is all I'm going to say. And the director, Jessica M. Thompson, is here joining us on the Film Threat Livecast. Jessica, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time to chat with us on the day of your film opening. How exciting is that?
I know, no place I'd rather be than here with Film Threat. How you guys
that's
doing?
Great. That's great. First of all, congratulations on the film. I know how hard it is to, one, get a movie made, two, actually get it released so it can be seen. So congratulations on that. And you are a big horror and sci-fi buff, is what I'm told.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I grew up on horror and sci-fi from, The Omen to The Shining to The Birds, that was my jam. So it's such a joy to be able to, finally make my mark in that genre. Yeah.
And real quick, I want to ask, as I watched the credits last night at the film, Blair Butler wrote the script. Is it Blair Butler from Kansas?
And yes, I do believe she is from Kansas.
From G4's Attack of the Show?
She's from G4's Attack of the Show. Is that?
There you go.
Is that so? Because I used to work with her.
Oh, she's an absolute legend. She's such a delight. I loved working with Blair, and she's such a, an imaginative force, tour de force.
Okay, great. All right. Because I was like, wait a sec. I think I might know that Blair Butler, but I worked with Blair Butler at G4 TV. She's a huge comic book nerd.
Yes.
She reviewed comics on Attack of the Show, and she was a producer and writer behind the scenes, and sometimes a reluctant performer, but she did so great. And I'm so happy to see her succeed with this film. You premiered at South by Southwest. Is that right?
No, that was my first feature.
The first feature.
Yeah, this one we premiered here in New York.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, what drew you to the material? We've seen a lot of vampire stories. Mm-hmm. This one is very different. And, if you don't see the trailer, you just walk in cold. You're like, what is this movie about? I don't want to ruin anything. There is an incredible reveal scene where you think something's weird is going on. There's all sorts of clues that weird things are going on. When it's finally revealed what is going on, it's glorious. What drew you to the script, the material, and looking on this as kind of an opportunity to kind of say something new about that genre?
Yeah, I mean, well, exactly what you said. I felt it was a fresh take, and I'm someone who's, loves all the vampire films, loves Kronos, love, the kind of the OG vampire films, and Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. And so when I saw Blair's script come to me, and I saw it was kind of, a retelling, a reimagining of that from maybe a feminist angle, and included the brides of Dracula, I was all in. I thought it was really unique. Like you said, a fresh take on that kind of old genre. And I also love a bit of a mashup. So I love kind of a romance horror mash. I'm a very big fan of Guillermo del Toro and how he kind of makes you fall in love with his monsters. So that's kind of what it was, is that I felt it was fresh and had something new to say.
And what went into like the production design? Because it sort of starts out, once you get to this, I mean, is it a castle or a mansion?
It's a bit of everything. Right. It was actually an 18th century castle in Hungary that we filmed in. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And it's actually the great-grandson of Madame Bathory, who, if you don't know, is like the blood queen who like swam in the blood of virgins and, killed over 600 women, something crazy like that. That's her great-grandson's castle that we filmed in.
Because that really sort of sets the tone. I really do, I think location can become a character, and the location in a way is like a character in this film.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what I intended. I mean, just like the Overlook, right? I wanted the castle to be a part of the world, to kind of make it feel like there's something creeping underneath the walls. And that's why we created this kind of upstairs, downstairs world. As soon as we go downstairs to the maids and things are happening in those quarters that are different to the upstairs, I wanted to utilize all of those, kind of the geography of the mansion and the architecture of it, to play into the horror.
Well, you've got a lot of comments. We have this is live on YouTube, so we have a lot of people commenting, a lot of questions. So do you mind if we go to those?
Go for it.
Let's do it. So Solomon Thorne says, greetings, Lady Jessica. And Liam in Wales says, redhead vampires need to be a thing. That's cool. And John Manling says, no way, Blair's awesome.
She is awesome. Blair is awesome.
And then Goober says, I'm guessing you're not in Australia.
No, but I do sound Australian. I live in Los Angeles, and before that I was 10 years in New York. So I've been in the States for a while, but I am from Sydney, true and true.
Cool. And Glenicio asks, which horror movies inspired you the most?
Yeah, I already mentioned it. The Shining for sure is like probably one of my favorite films of all time, really. I can rewatch that film till the cows come home. But Kronos by Guillermo del Toro, I really love that it's like a horror film with heart. But I'm also a big fan of the South Korean horror films like Train to Busan, Old Boy, films like that as well. I really love their kind of mixture of action and also once again, heartfelt horror. That's what it's all about to me.
And then Dempsey says, I can't figure out whether to freak out about Jessica or Natalie or more. So
all of us, and Thomas Doherty, he's stunning.
And then CD Stein 69 says, ask Jess, if you had the chance to film a classic horror movie, what would it be and why?
Oh, like to reinvent one of the originals?
Yeah.
Oh, I want to say Rosemary's Baby.
That would be.
I mean, but I'm also very scared. Like, for instance, Rebecca is one of my favorite original horror films, and I, wasn't a massive fan of the retelling of it. So part of me is like, I would be scared to, touch a film that's already so perfect.
Cool. And then Fletcher Williams asks, what kind of equipment did you use to get the color palette? I mean, color is like a big part of this movie, and it's a big part of the tone. So we do have aspiring filmmakers watching. What can you maybe give us a little bit of the technical insight into how you designed it?
Yeah, so I worked with Autumn Aiken, my cinematographer, who also did my first feature, The Light of the Moon, and Felicity Abbott, our production designer. We worked really close together to create a distinct look for the kind of the more fairy tale romance version of the film versus the nightmare version, and changed up the lenses and everything. So we shot on the Arri Alexa LF, which is a favorite camera of mine, and we used their DNA lenses. And we, depending on when we were, changed up the framing and things like that, depending on whether we were trying to hint at the horror or, go with it. But one of my favorite things to do is to use, wide angle lenses for close-ups and to, just create that little bit of distortion. And that kind of makes us feel really deeply connected to the characters, but also, warps our perspective a little bit. So yeah, playing with all those little tips and tricks.
Cool. And then we had a few questions about the trailer. And I think
don't watch it. Go and play.
I know that's the question I had was, do you feel like it maybe revealed a little bit too much, and were you happy with it?
Yes, I do believe it revealed too much. But supposedly that's what a lot of people want these days, especially with horror, to know what they're getting in for. Personally, I am someone who thinks you should not watch the trailer. The way I watch a film is I look at the director and I look at the lead actor, and that's it. That'll make me decide whether I'm going to go see it or not.
Thankfully, I did not see the trailer for this movie before, but they just ruin too much these days. I like to walk in when Nicole Kidman sits down. That's when I sit down at your AMC.
That's it. No, that's it. I agree with you fully. I'm someone who, less is more. So I would encourage fans to just go and enjoy it and not know any spoilers.
Cool. And then Flaccid Phoenix has a question. What was your favorite shot to shoot? A lot of directors have like a favorite, like this shot. You obsess over a specific shot.
Yeah, the piece de resistance shot. In the big reveal, in the R-rated version, which is coming out later, there is a big, almost 270-degree turn of the camera for the big reveal in that beautiful dining hall scene. So it is not in the cinematic version, but it is in the R-rated version, which is coming to home entertainment later. So that one took a lot, because we had to time it perfectly, had to time the lighting change perfectly, had to time the camera move perfectly. And so it's always so fun when you see all the departments come together, cast, crew, everyone, and they, it takes a few goes to get it exactly right. And it's a big, as you said, it's quite the reveal. So, seeing everyone's kind of reactions in that 200, degree view is a lot of fun.
I mean, it definitely pushed the limits for PG-13. I'm kind of surprised. I'm glad to hear that there's an R-rated version on the way. Patrick Lear says the production started in September 2021. Must have been challenging to shoot a vampire movie in the social distance era. Lots and lots of testing. What were the challenges of shooting now with all these new rules?
Yes, it was tough. We did get shut down twice, but just for 2 days each time. So luckily it wasn't, enough to, throw us off the rails or anything like that. But yeah, it's a lot of testing. It's a lot of mask wearing, which I find, a lot of communication happens with your face and with your expression. So I find it very difficult to direct. I have to use my eyes a lot and rely, so it's definitely difficult. It's not the way that films should be made, because you lose that kind of emotional connection. Thankfully, obviously, because the actors don't have masks on, you can still read their expressions. But yes, not my favorite way to make a film.
And Matthew Hammond, thank you for $4.99 and supporting the channel. It's nice that you actually shot this on location without green screens. What were the challenges with lodging and traveling to the castle each day? I mean, it's got to be fun to make a movie in Bulgaria, like
Hungary. Yeah.
Hungary. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Hungary.
Yeah. So the castle was about an hour in a town called Csekéshfehérvár. I got really good at pronouncing it. An hour outside of Budapest, and the cast and crew, we all stayed at a local. It was quite a beautiful old hotel. It felt a little creepy, and I will say that coming home at 4 a.m. sometimes with those long halls, it's like an 1800s hotel. I was like, someone's going to come out of the door after we've been shooting horror films all day. But it was really lovely because we all got to be in this little village together, and it wasn't very many people, because we were outside of Budapest. We shot some of it on stages at Budapest where we created all the sets. But the actual castle, when we shot the exteriors, were all in this little village that was beautiful.
Cool. And then John Manalang says, any inspiration from Interview with a Vampire? Till this day, it's still one of the most unique approaches to the genre.
John, I fully agree. I think it is an underappreciated film. I still think it's one of the best. And I love it. And I love this. And also The Hunger, Tony Scott's The Hunger. That kind of, this regal vampire who's kind of affluent and elitist. That was definitely something that I was wanting to capture for sure.
Well, I love that concept of, like, if you're a vampire, you've been around for a long time, you get good with money.
Exactly. And you've collected all this art, especially like you've collected art that now is like, worth so much money, which is definitely something we play on with this. A lot of the artifacts are real artifacts or recreations of them, like the abduction of the Sabine woman, which is one of the featured paintings. Those are all real artworks that we got to recreate.
Also, the real estate investment that was going on there too.
Because I like that the film. I mean, yes, vampires. It's a part of this is the story, but it's also about class disparity.
Yeah,
the film really delves into that. I don't know how much of that was from the script or you brought to it.
I mean, absolutely, it was always in Blair's script, but it was. I mean, it's both, but it's definitely a rich eating the poor story, and that's 100% what our intention was. To me, the classism is the number one theme in the story. And exactly when Evie comes in and dispels all that, because she's someone who's from the working class and she gets along with all the maids. She treats them like real people. She doesn't, because that's how her day job is, So that's a lot of humanity, gives a lot of humanity to her character.
And Akanika asks, were you involved in the casting? If so, talk about the process. And I assume you're involved in the casting. You're the director.
Yes, so I'd like to hope so.
Yeah.
Natalie was always number one on my list. I like a lot of people. She caught my eye in Game of Thrones. That's when I first kind of started to realize who she is. And I love that she took a relatively small character from the books and really owned it. And that character got bigger and bigger each season because the audiences loved her so much. And that's just shows you the kind of actor and talent that she is. So she was always on the top of my list, and I'm so glad that she identified with the character. Thomas Doherty was a new face to me. I didn't know who he was. He auditioned for the role and absolutely won it hands down.
Oh, my daughter knows who he is.
Yeah, that's right. And I was like, all of my nieces and nephews are like, Thomas Doherty. Yeah, we know who that is. I'm like, oh, okay. But to me, he was a new face, and I'm glad that he's now, hopefully this brings him into a whole different audience, out of the YA kind of audience, because I think he's one of those incredible finds, incredible talents.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about after the screening. It's like, oh, that guy, he was definitely a standout for sure.
Yeah.
And Patrick Lemire says vampires live on blood and compound interest. And Jeff
If
asked,
only we could all be vampires.
do any authors inspire you, such as Stephen King? Any horror authors?
Oh, I mean, Stephen King, 100%. I often, how there's that thing that he does where he like sells his short films for like $1. I've always wanted short stories for $1. I've always like every now and then I'll go on his archives and like read one and be like, I want to make a Stephen King film so bad. The Outsider as well, I thought was an incredible TV rendition of one of his, and Castle Rock, and so many great things. I mean, this man is just a genius.
Question here from Solomon Thornton. My favorite vampire film is Bram Stoker's Dracula. What is your favorite vampire film? That's a tough question, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, it's tough. But like I said, Kronos, which doesn't actually say the word vampire, but I mean, just like our film, we never actually say the word. But that is definitely, I'd say, my number one vampire film. Just because, like I said, it's really about a grandfather and a granddaughter trying to connect, and she's trying to keep her granddad, alive. And I think there's just something really human and beautiful about that. Yeah.
Now, you may or may not want to answer this question. I think it's fair if you don't, but Dempsey asks, can you tell us anything about your vampires? I know that the actual properties of vampires and vampirism varies wildly from story to story. I don't know.
I'll tell you one little fact that I wanted to stay true to Bram Stoker with. Obviously, I read Bram Stoker's Dracula when I was like 12 or 13. I think like most people in high school, it's one of the mandatory reading things. So I reread it obviously before delving into the film. And I realized that his vampires all walk around during the day. And Coppola sticks to that as well. And it's just that they lose their powers during the day. So I decided to stick to that because I thought it would hold off the suspense. We wouldn't be able to guess whether they were vampires or what kind of creatures they were, because we see them in broad daylight. And so that was something that was important to me. One, to throw off the audience, but two, to stay true to the source material. Yeah.
I'll just say this isn't Twilight. That's not, this is not Twilight.
I'm just curious, but when you attached yourself to Blair's script, what is that relationship like afterwards in terms of, do you negotiate certain story elements, or do you talk about how you have to change your script to fit, your budget and your production, things like that?
Yeah, so I did rewrite some of the script with full Blair's permission and acknowledgement. Directors always get to do a director's pass. This was a little bit more intensive than that. But I'm someone who always includes my writers in that. I would never want to do, I want to service the script. And to me, that was making the characters stronger, making the relationships more believable, making them more authentic. But in terms of plot, that was all Blair. That was the whole story. The way that she constructed it, the concept, all of that is Blair. And I just, put a little few tweaks in there to just put my little stamp on it. But to me, there is writers can sometimes come on board to rewrite, and directors, and not even contact the first writer, which I think is poor form and disgraceful, and should not be allowed. So I'm someone who I reached out before anyone gave me her contact. I reached out to her to let her know, I would love to do this with you, and we've become great friends over the process, which is lovely.
Well, tell her I said hi.
I will.
I used to, I was with a group of people where we would get together every Sunday to watch football. Blair is a big NFL fan.
No way.
I'm serious.
That is the last thing I would have expected you to say.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say we all got together and picked a Hammer horror film to watch or something.
Well, I mean, we would have football on, but we would then talk about nerd stuff. Yeah. So that's kind of where that went. Solomon Thornton says, ever seen any Japanese horror? If so, what is your favorite? You mentioned earlier South Korean horror films.
Yeah. Gosh, now I'm trying to think of what is it? No.
You said Train to Busan.
Train to Busan. A Tale of Two Sisters is Korean as well, right? Which is beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. I'm trying to think. Now I know I love Japanese horror, but now I can't think of. It's not. The Handmaiden is not technically horror, but I think there's some horror elements in there with the octopus. Well, not to give it away, but if you haven't seen The Handmaiden, everyone needs to go see The Handmaiden.
And I know we got to wrap up real quick, but we still have more questions rolling in. Fletcher Williams, editing software, what did you use? And do you like practical effects or digital effects? How do you work with those?
Yeah, so I started off as an editor. So I always use Avid, just big Avid nerd. But mind you, I used to also do commercial editing, and I did use Premiere. But always a feature film, I will always use Avid. I didn't edit this one, but I wanted to make sure we were using Avid. And I'm a massive fan of practical effects, massive. I always try to, whenever physically possible, whenever safe to do so, use practical effects. And you'll see that in this film for sure. There's lots of prosthetic work, especially in the R version, where you really get to enjoy some of that prosthetic work. But of course, you always have to accentuate it digitally, because you can't light a whole thing on fire. Well, not on $15 million. Maybe when I get Christopher Nolan's budgets, I'll be able to light a whole building on fire. But yeah, you usually shoot that fire elements and then accentuate them.
Said no one ever says Thirst is the weirdest vampire movie I've ever seen. Did Thirst from Park Chan-wook inspire the way you, in any way, making the movie?
Yes, I love Park Chan-wook, and I think Thirst, I do think it's weird, but I think it's wildly wonderful and kind of unexpected. And yeah, absolutely. I literally, so before making the film, I watched every single vampire film, rewatched them all to make sure that I wasn't copying or doing anything. I wanted to make sure that I was, my approach was fresh. So.
And then 2 more questions. CD Stein 69 says, outside of horror, what other kind of movie would you want to make?
A sci-fi. So that's next in the books. A grounded psychological sci-fi.
Oh,
something akin to Arrival or Ex Machina. Yeah.
You should. There's a movie coming out this fall called Vesper. Have you seen the trailer for it?
No, not yet.
Okay. After this, please watch the trailer for Vesper. It's coming out from IFC Films. I can't wait for that. It looks like the most original, weird, dystopian horror film I've seen in years. So check out Vesper. And then Lubitsch Touched Me asks, do you have your next project in mind already?
Your name. That name. I do have a film with a working title, incredible production company, that is a psychosexual drama. So a little bit different, that I wrote and we'll be directing with them. So that's coming up. Yeah.
Great. Well, Jessica Thompson, thank you so much for joining us on the Film Threat Livecast. Congratulations on the film. The Invitation is out now in theaters and will be coming soon in an R-rated version. We can't wait for that. Jessica, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you. I love this. Thanks, guys.
All right. Take care. Later.
See ya.
Bye.